You're tuned into RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
4 seconds left. In front. Happy moment. The Tampa Bay Lightning have won the Stanley Cup. And the Tampa Bay Lightning have won the Stanley Cup. Lightning strikes twice. The Tampa Bay Lightning win their second straight Stanley Cup.
Welcome back, everybody, into RBLR Lightning. As always, my name is Jake Ricker. Alongside me, it's Joe Zamatora, Matt Gannon. Guys, welcome back to the show. How you doing today?
I'm doing rather well. You know, I've been seeing you guys a lot recently. I feel like we've been doing a lot of shows. We had a RBLR takeover on the Bolt Report. I'm not sure if any of those podcasts have dropped yet, but if so, go check them out. It was always a good time hanging out with you and Michael, but the rest of the week was rather good to me.
Yeah, and if they haven't dropped yet, you'll have to let us know when they're going to, because there's definitely some interesting content in there, including maybe a painful moment or two.
They are still currently in the editing room, but should be out very, very
heavily
soon.
edited / redacted.
Well, the first two, not so much. The third one, yes, that's going to be heavily edited.
Well, I'm looking forward for everyone seeing what we're talking about when they do come out.
Well, we'll tease it a little bit for those that don't know. We did a preview, or we did a recap, a preview, and then a trivia show. And let's just say it was a very interesting trivia show, to say the least. But if you want to check that out, that's going to be coming out at BoltReport_TV with the RBLR crew as well. So it was just some exciting times. But guys, to talk about a little bit today, you know, it's not just we're going to continue our report card series today, which, by the way, if you've missed out on the earlier episodes of this series, you can head back over there on any of the streaming platforms that we're on, or on right here on YouTube, which don't forget to like and subscribe. You don't miss out on the future episodes. But we also have a little bit of news today, because the Lightning kind of handed out a lot of contracts today, making some moves. Really, to me, this was kind of their draft, if you really want to think about it, because the Lightning won't be picking until the 6th round this year. So they're going to have to sign some guys, because there's no other way they can really do it this year to get some new prospects. So the Lightning making some moves. So let's go over those moves very quickly. The first one was a re-signing, and that was the re-signing of defenseman Sean Day, a 1-year, 2-way contract. The average annual salary is estimated to be at $775,000. Sean Day, it's a pretty solid defenseman for the Lightning. He's been a consistent player down there in Syracuse. 63 games played last year. No goals, 14 assists, and 14 points. And he was a +0 on the year. And then the second signing that they made was the free agent from the Finnish free agent, and his name is Waltteri Merida. They signed him to a 1-year, 2-way contract at the average annual salary of $950,000, 41 games played, 15 goals, 18 assists, for a total of 33 points. And then the last signing that they made today was the Norwegian free agent defenseman Emilie Lingerberg, a 2-year, 2-way contract for him with the average annual salary of $950,000, 46 games played, 3 goals, 8 assists, for a total of 11 points. So some minor signings in the grand scheme of things, not going to really affect the cap too much, because these are more than likely guys going to be playing down in the minors. Well, I don't know if all of them will come over to the U.S. to play with the Crunch. They could potentially still be playing overseas, but a lot of depth signing for the Bolts guys. Any thoughts on these guys?
I'm intrigued by the I'm going to butcher it, but the Valtteri Mirella. I got to do a better job, but I'm really interested to see what he might become. You know, he's 24 years old. He's not exactly a young guy, but he had some good numbers in the Finnish Liga, which is a pretty decent professional league. It's a men's league. It's not a very high scoring league, but to be, a little over half a point per game, that's definitely intriguing. I like the way you put it, Jake. This is kind of their draft, signing a lot of these European players, because we've only got 2 picks in this year's draft. So, so I think that's definitely an intriguing one. Of course, re-signing Sean Day, he's most likely not going to get any playing time with the Lightning this year, barring many injuries. He's been a steady force back there. So, but no, the Valtteri signing, I'd like to see what he'd be able to do on a crunch team.
He's an interesting one because he's got probably the most points out of all these guys. And Joe, I know you're not, you're always big on, hey, let's get the guys working now. But don't you see this as something maybe the kind of a prospect filling couple of moves here?
Well, sure, and our ability to scout both inside the NHL and outside, the Lightning has done a fabulous job with that. I'm not going to pretend like I know everything about this prospect, but if it's someone that the Lightning have their eye on, and it was enough for Brisebois to ink a deal, you gotta know that there's going to be potential there, and that's going to go for all of these signings that the Lightning are going to be having this offseason. It's exciting that we already have some news to report on that because there are so many gaps to fill for coming up to this July 1st deadline, and we'll see how these all come together. But I mean, if you're drafting in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, you don't know who these guys are anyway, or how they're going to, what they're going to amount to. And a signing like this, the guy's got a little bit of history. I can't pull up his stats quickly enough here, but like I say, I really do trust in the scouting department. So anyone that they get on the roster, it's I know it's going to benefit the Lightning.
The NHL recently released all of the teams' draft day hats as they do every year. Of course, the Lightning ones got tweeted around, and I was thinking to myself, did they get the least, did they get one box of hats because they only have 2 picks? Like all the other teams are getting 6 boxes for all the picks. No, the Lightning were like, we'll get like 2 or 3 of them, and we'll be good to go. Do they even show anything they really need to do for that? I mean, I know, of course, there's trades and all that kind of stuff, but kind of a draft situation when you really think about it for the Lightning. Matt, as you mentioned, a couple of those guys are a little bit older, but some of them are younger as well. So we'll see where they fit into the Lightning lineup over the next couple of months here. If they're coming over to training camp or not, I'm not exactly sure, but they're guys to keep your eyes on potentially. As we know, as you mentioned, Joe, the Lightning have a very good scouting department, and the Lightning always have players that somehow, for a lot of other fans, magically come out of nowhere, but it's because the scouting department is that good. Now, on the NHL side of things, there's a couple of new news, if you will, to report, and the main one on Alex Killorn. So we talked about Killorn a little bit earlier in a couple of earlier shows and wondering if he is going to be coming back this year. Of course, he's an unrestricted free agent, and according to Elliot Friedman, the Lightning made an offer to Killorn, a long-term, low AAV offer. We don't know exactly what that could be. We just know that it's potentially long-term and at a very low price, which is kind of what we talked about, guys, that if Killorn's going to come back, it's going to have to be on a low number.
I'm interested to see, if, of course, the offer gets accepted. But, first of all, what long-term low AAV means for for a 34-year-old. What is long-term? How many years is that? It's obviously not going to be an 8-year deal. He's not going to be playing until 42. Joe?
I'm going to throw a guess out, just 2 by 5.
I would
$2 million a year for 5 years.
Oh, I would take that. I would take that.
Well,
But I do wonder if like what the structure would be like, because with these veteran type of deals, especially with a good veteran like Alex Killorn, I think they're going to try to backload the contract to give us, a little bit of cap flexibility and cash flexibility in the present and near future. And maybe towards the end of the deal, he might retire. He might, get injured or something. Might even be a buyout. These GMs and the capologists are a lot smarter with working out these deals and figuring out a way to not make them so impactful in the farther future. If it is going to be a long-term deal, there is a, decent chance that he might not be able to play the full, let's say 5 years or so. God, I hope he definitely could, but that's how a lot of contracts are being structured nowadays. Is they're very they're very backloaded. So if you do buy them out in the future, or if they get injured or something, it's not as costly to your salary cap because you're going to be placing that money elsewhere.
So one thing to note is he is 34. There's a 35 plus contract limit for the NHL, where you basically can't buy them out. So if you sign them to a deal, you're knowing that the guy's probably going to like. So for instance, if Killorn say 37 and you sign him to like a 10-year deal at 1 million a year, it's obviously Cap's trying to circumvent the cap because he's not going to be playing that many years. He's at 34, so the way this is structured, it's the only time that he'll be able to get a deal like this where it could be long term for a low AAV and go within this 35 plus contract clause. I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but there's rules against basically overpaying a veteran player when you know they're not going to be able to complete their contract.
I don't know what it's going to be. I would think in the $3 million range would be my guess, and maybe a little bit less years. But knowing JBB, I wouldn't be surprised at $2 million per for 5 years. That would be, I think, a great contract for the Lightning. I think Killorn would be inclined to take any deal that he gets because I know he wants to stay in Tampa. The interesting thing, though, is the cap is only going up $1 million this year. It's not giving the Lightning a lot of flexibility. However, next year it is expected to take a large jump, and depending on what league revenues could be next year, the NHL, for those that don't know, had a record-breaking year when it comes to revenues. Now that's mostly because of the ESPN deals, all the leagues coming back, obviously, and fans at full capacity, and have been for a little bit now. But everything is 100% full swing again. So record-breaking year for the NHL in revenue. And if they can continue that next year, we could see they're reporting the cap jump up anywhere near 8, 9, even I've heard as high as 12 million. I don't know if it's going to be that much, but at least 4, 5, or 6 million is what they're saying for next year. So there's a lot to think about there. A lot of these guys could be wanting to sign 1-year deals. It sounds like the Lightning are hoping Killorn doesn't go that route, but maybe we see some guys sign some 1-year deals and short-term deals because they're going to have a lot more flexibility when it comes to years in the future with the cap space. But the whole cap space situation, another story. We can spend another 20 minutes on that alone because you got to have your degree to look at this cap stuff. It's crazy.
Oh yeah, I don't even try to wrap my mind around it. I do my best to try to comprehend it, but there's a reason why the people that do the salary cap gymnastics get paid a lot more money than I.
Well, I did confirm that I have my buddy that's available to come in on the show, who is very good with these numbers, and we can discuss all these ins and outs. When he's on, he's someone that was on Bolt Prospects as one of their writers and is familiar with the whole process. Regarding Killorn, one more time though, I would love for it to be the 2. If we $2 million, if we split the difference and made it 2.5, I think that still might even be enough room to sign Colton and keep him. You just got to hope that that's a huge hometown discount that Killorn's willing to make there.
Well, again, maybe you see Colton consider a 1-year deal because the cap is going to jump up next year because the escrow payment.
That would make sense.
And for those that don't know, that's the reason the cap is not going up this year, is because the players are still paying back their escrow. If you want to get some details, I highly recommend The Hockey Guy. He does a couple of videos on all that stuff and breaks it down very well. But maybe Colton is willing to sign a 1-year deal cheap because he knows he can get actually paid a lot more next year because teams are going to have some more flexibility.
I'm going to pour a little cold water on that real quick, Jake. I think this is Colton's last year of being restricted. I think he might have one more, but I don't think the Bolts would walk him to unrestricted free agency. If anything, it'd probably be a 2-year deal at minimum or so, but I think they'd at least try to lock up one UFA year or so. But again, we're getting way ahead of ourselves. So let's speculate on something else, maybe something else a little bit more positive.
That's the perfect transition. So for those that don't know, on Instagram, Brandon Hagel was making some interesting Instagram posts as he posted a picture of 2 pictures, one of him in a Lightning uniform. I think the other was just him hanging around in Tampa. And the caption was simply just a lightning bolt. And then Nick Paul in the comments commented the two eyeball emojis. So something could be brewing down there with Brandon Hagel and a contract extension. And now he cannot sign an extension until July 1st. So we won't hear about anything until then. But just looking and reading in between the lines, it definitely feels like Brandon Hagel has got a contract extension in the door.
So I want to break that down. The first picture was him in his business suit as he's walking into the rink, indicating business. And the second picture was after
There you
he
go.
scored a goal celebrating, meaning that the goal has been accomplished. And then the caption was the
I didn't
lightning
even think
bolt.
about it like that. That's
I'm just
I love
saying,
that even more.
he's playing that emoji game, getting his meme game going strong here. I think that was a pretty solid hint that it is absolutely under wraps.
We're doing some, 15-year-old teenage girl speculation right here. We're going, to insane lengths trying to make this happen. But I'm all for it.
I mean,
just hope,
is it
I hope
insane length though?
we're reaching a little bit. I'm just hoping that
context to post something like that. Not like it was a game day
That's
or
fair.
anything.
That's fair. I'm just waiting for the next, post or story with, a couple money bag emojis, hopefully. And I think then I'll completely buy in.
What sold it for me was Nick Paul's comment. The two. I'm like, oh, now Nick Paul's in on this too. Like that's got to mean something because Nick Paul is signed long term. He's not going anywhere. So I think Nick Paul's like, all right, I got somebody stay with me. And I love that you brought that up, Joe, because I didn't even think about the business suit and getting the deal done. I love it. But unfortunately, we're going to have to wait until at least July 1st to even hear what the extension could possibly be. But that doesn't surprise me that the Lightning are already working on this. JBB is known to get ahead of these types of extensions, and I'm not shocked that they're trying to bring him back, obviously, because Brendan Hagel is a piece they went out and traded for. It's a guy that, JBB had talked about when the first acquiring him, and that they want him to be part of the long-term outlook for the Lightning. So this would be a huge win for the Lightning, assuming the deal is close to being done or done already. And we'll have to wait and see around July for any predictions on what we could see that extension possibly being.
I would adore a 6x6. I think that's completely fair. He honestly might be able to get a little bit more. He's what he got 62, 65-ish points this year, 30 goals. I mean, you can definitely take a good chunk, but I would love to see, a nice even 6x6. I think that would be a very team friendly while also, good chunk of change for him as well. It's, guaranteed money for him on a long-term deal in a place that he, seems to like to play in. I think that's very fair for both parties.
Yeah, I definitely completely agree with that. The question obviously is going to be how much money is left over, to get him to a value like that, which, I mean, only JBB knows really those numbers now because there's deals being done behind closed doors.
Now, speaking of spending money, Matt, I know you just went out and spent some money and acquired a beautiful new hat, and you can show it off us there for the RBLR Lightning hat. How you loving that one, Matt?
It's actually a very terrific hat. Eureka wasn't hyping it up a whole lot for me, but it came in. I was definitely, my expectations were a little blown. It's got the nice green bill underneath it, but it's a very nice quality hat. I got the Lightning colors right here. But you can get them in all different shades of Rowdy's green and white, Bucks black, red and white, the Rays blue and white. Dude, I highly recommend it. You guys got to get your own.
Well, we're going to hype it up right now. If you want to for yourself, you can head to shop.rblrsports.com, checking out not only the hats, but all of the awesome inspired merch from each of the teams, the Rays, the Lightning, the Bucks, the Rowdies, you name it, we got it. And best part, you guys can use code BOLTS for 10% off your order, because we know not everybody's going to have Brandon Hagel and Alex Killorn extension money going out to spend on all this awesome stuff, but it's highly recommend to go check it out. As you can see, Matt rocking the RBLR hat today in the show. And again, that is shop.rblrsports.com and use code BOLTS to get 10% off of your order. All right.
I love the teamwork shop transition. That's one of my all-timers right there.
Absolutely. All right, let's get into the report card series. We're going to switch. We've been doing forwards for the last couple episodes. Now we're going to go ahead and take a look at the defensive side of things, and we're going to be going over three defensemen: Victor Hedman, Mikhail Sergachev, and Eric Cernak. We'll start off with the big Swede himself, Victor Hedman. He has been a dominant force on the Lightning for so many years now, and I think he had an interesting year. He played in 76 games this season with 9 goals, 40 assists for a total of 49 points. And, I think a lot of us thought he was battling some kind of injury early on in the season. He did have an injury he dealt with that helped him out for a couple of games of the playoffs this year. He played in 5 total games, had 3 assists for 3 points, was a +4 in the postseason. But, again, we talked about this with some of the other top guys, or like Andre Vasilevsky, for example. You have such high expectations for these star players in the Lightning that sometimes even their okay seasons are looked at even worse just because their expectations are so high. So, guys, what are your thoughts on Victor Hedman in his season this year?
This was definitely one of the seasons that I felt like Hetty was struggling quite a bit. I was one of the people that would say that, maybe there's a nagging injury or something going on. I don't know exactly when. Was it a hip impingement? Is that what he was said to have had?
I believe so, yes.
When that ended up being a real issue for him, it's not something that they really hand out that the exact time that happened. If that was from the hit in the that first playoff game. But he definitely seemed to, I want to say, lost a step this season. And in terms of what you expect out of Victor Hedman, I would like to have seen him be a better performer. He had some games where he looked, really great, and other where he looked pretty mediocre. And again, I don't think that's Hedman's taken a step backwards. I think there was something that was ailing him for the majority of this season, and that's a tough thing to have to play with.
Yeah, I'm not going to look too deep into his, mediocre-ish performance this year because I am going to side on the party of, it was kind of a nagging injury. I mean, he's been a warrior, just like everybody else who's been on this team for the last couple of deep playoff runs, and he's been he's been one of the people that have taken some of the most beatings. He's a defenseman. He's a shot blocker. I'm not sure what exactly. I know we all kind of speculated like what might be ailing him pretty much from the start of the season. But you're right, Joe. It did look like he, lost his legs a little bit this season. Just looked a little bit slower. Wasn't quite as agile. That's a huge part of his game. Despite being 6'6", he's a very agile defenseman with great speed as well. I still think everything was there. I still think he's probably got one of the best defensive stick. I think he's got the best defensive stick in the league as a defenseman. But when you don't have your legs working with you and, just your entire lower body kind of working against you, acting like 2 boat anchors with you, I'm not saying he was, as slow as Corey Perry maybe, but you could definitely see he had lost a bit of a step. So it was a good bit of regression for him this year, but still, 45 points, almost 10 goals from a defenseman. And, let's, also realize that it took him a while to get, his first goal and his second goal. He did kind of pick it up towards the end of the year, I will say. Another thing we got to consider is Mikhail Sergachev had such a good year that he ended up usurping his spot on the #1 power play. That can't go unnoticed, and it's not a anything Victor did wrong. I would say it was more of Sergachev playing, Sergachev playing better, not Hetty playing bad or anything, but it definitely was a regressive season by his standards. But I don't think somebody with that much hockey IQ, somebody that is a guaranteed lock for the Hall of Fame, a Norris Trophy and Conn Smythe winner, can fall off that hard that fast.
He didn't have his best year, but I mean, when you look at the injuries he's dealt with over the last couple of years, he's actually only ever had one season where he's played a full 82 games, and that was last year. So he does deal with injuries quite a bit. He had one this year, although he did say in his press conference that going into the postseason, he was completely healthy. Matt, to your point with Mikhail Sergachev, I think, the Lightning looked at it and said, hey, Sergachev is becoming one of our top defenders. We're now paying him like he is our top defender. So why not put him into that top role and see how he deals with that kind of pressure? I think Hedman's absolutely going to have a bounce back year next year. I don't think he is like major drop off where we're going to see him, not be anything like he has been in the past couple of years. I think this was just a little bit of a not his best year because of the slow start, the slow ending. What's that?
A hiccup.
A hiccup. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I think it was a little bit of a hiccup for him. He still had a solid season overall. So let's go for the grades. I normally go first for these, but I'm going to let you guys take it. Matt, what's your grade for Victor Hedman?
It takes a lot for me to criticize him. It really does. He's probably one of the people I will defend till the end of time, but it's unfortunate. I'll have to give him a B minus. Again, you know, I could go over about what we all just said about the regression and everything, but I still think that there were a lot of positives to his game. A B minus is not a bad grade whatsoever. I would beg for that on any of my report cards, but you know, there were definitely some glaring holes in his game this year. Again, like we all said, it's just a little bit of a hiccup. I don't expect any of this to be consistent or even a bit more of a regression next year. I don't think that's going to happen, but in the grand scheme, I do think it was an off year for him, but still showed up, you know, relatively consistently and regularly. But there were some few knocks in his game, so I will have to give him a B minus for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna knock that down even lower and go with a straight C. And you know, I'll echo what Matt said. It's not because he's regressing in his talent. It's just because he had a bit of a bummer season, and looking forward to see him do better next year.
I'm not going to go that low, and I'm going to go with a B. And the
Surprise.
Well, I have my reasoning. Don't worry, it's not just because I'm a big home. I am, but listen, I think Hedman is one of the most consistent, and if not the best, one of the best defenders in the NHL. And I think if you look at his stats this year, yes, he didn't have a ton of offense, which sometimes he normally is pretty good at that, but I still think he had a pretty decent year defensively. And listen, at the end of the day, that's what you want Victor Hedman for, to be really good defensively. So that's why I'm not going to knock him as much, even though his points definitely dipped than in years past. I still think he was pretty solid defensively, plus 10 on the year. So I'm going with a B. Maybe it is the homer in me, but you know, I like this defensive play this year. I think he's always one of the best defensive guys in the NHL.
Joe, do you remember his goal against Boston? Come on, that beautiful goal. I know we ended up losing that game, but it was an awesome goal. Come on, you gotta give him a C plus, or a C plus. Come on.
for one play, I'll tell you what, I'd bump it up to a C plus because I thought he actually did play well given the injuries that he had, especially when it came to the playoffs. So I'll give him that C plus. That might feel a little bit bad calling you know, someone that's such a pivotal part of our team just an average guy.
I didn't think that would work.
Well, we'll throw it to our listeners as well. Let us know what you think on Victor Hedman. What grade would you give him? So the average here on RBLR, though, is a B minus for Victor Hedman. Hey, still a solid grade. Still, in you know, they always say you want to try and get A's and B's in school, right? A's and B's for the Lightning consistently so far. So a solid season for Victor Hedman. Hopefully he can bounce back and get right back to that A plus category that we've always known from Victor Hedman. And that's going to a guy that we've already kind of mentioned here today, and now Mikhail Sergachev, the guy that every time I look at his age, my jaw just drops, as he's as old as me and has accomplished so much in the NHL. I mean, this guy had an unbelievable year. He signed that extension, which is now kicking in, so starting to make the big bucks this year. He's a father now as well. And Sergachev finished the year 79 games played, 10 goals, 54 assists for a total of 64 points, and was a plus 13. But I think the big thing, guys, was we were hoping Sergachev was going to be able to step up because he got that new contract extension, and I think he did for the most part. I mean, he had to step up on power play one. I still think there's a lot that Sergachev is learning, and there were still some glaring mistakes that he made, which he has a tendency to do sometimes. I think Sergachev is one of those guys that he doesn't make mistakes too often, but when he does, they're kind of those mistakes where you're like, oh, really, Sergachev? Come on now. But he's getting better every year. He's stepping up into bigger roles. I think overall he had a very solid season.
Yeah, he definitely did. And you know, when Hedman went down and he stepped into power play one, to be able to keep that spot is, you know, it really says a lot. He's a guy that definitely makes mistakes, like you were saying. There's several times throughout the season when especially when we're having troubles with the shorthanded goals, he's trying to hold the blue line, and some of the plays he was just making were stupid, like trying to bat a puck out of midair in order to keep it in the zone rather than getting your momentum going backwards. But, you know, it's almost like a trope, a running gag on here. He's only 24. He's only 24, and he's just going to continue to excel. He's going to earn every dollar of his contract. And, you know, while it wasn't a perfect season per se, he played well above my expectations of him, especially because that was his first time when Hedman went down, his first time being defenseman number one. And that's a lot of responsibility to shoulder, especially again when you're only 24. I mean, the average defenseman doesn't enter the league until they're into their into their 20s, usually about that age. So it really says a lot to see him playing so well. And I thought he had a monster season for personal growth.
Oh yeah, and that's what this season was. It was a lot of growth. It was a lot of improvement. It's still crazy to me to think that there's still probably another level for him to unlock. I don't think he'll ever be, a Victor Hedman caliber player, at his ceiling. But if he can be just a notch below that, that's still a terrific defenseman. He had an incredible season by, for all of our standards, and I think he did improve on a lot. I think the step that Victor lost kind of went into Sergei's feet a little bit. I saw him using his legs a lot more. I'm not sure if he's on a new training regimen. I know he changed his stick at the start of the season, and that seemed to have, paid off in dividends for him. But I do, the biggest issue with him was those defensive mistakes, because when there were some, they were glaring. They were awful, pull your hair out kind of mistakes. And it seemed, throughout this year, there were just less and less and less of them, especially comparing them to previous seasons. And one thing that I think has gone very unnoticed by him, I love little niche things that players are good at. He keeps the puck in the zone better than almost anybody in the league. I think he is one of the best people at getting a puck out of the air. I know there were a couple of mistakes, Joe, about batting the puck out of the air, but I think he is tremendous at, being able to seal off pucks from exiting the offensive zone or even batting them out of the air. I think he is one of the best players at that. There's been countless times where I watch this on the power play and there's a surefire clear the zone, and Sergei somehow keeps it in, millimeters away from going offside. And it's just one small little niche thing I think he's been terrific at this year. And then every other aspect of his game as well. He's got such a tremendous shot. I don't think he really used it enough this year, but he really worked on his playmaking. It seemed his passing was a lot more crisp this year. But it's nothing short of a tremendous improvement.
No question. And again, 24 years old. I mean, he could be such a good player, and he's got, he's not even his prime yet. I mean, prime is considered what? Maybe right now, 25 to 28.
I'd say 26
a little later than that.
Mm-hmm.
So he's in his, you're getting ready to enter his prime, and he's already got over 238 points right now. I mean, it is really, really impressive what he's been able to do. And if he can continue to get better and better, he's going to be one of the top defenders for years to come.
I want to look at those points here for just a second. So last season was his career high. It was 64 points. His previous high was 40. So he surpassed it by quite a lot. When you look at the power play points, he got 27, where his previous high was 16. Wow. So even if and a lot of that's going to be on power play 1. Power play 2 was not very effective this season at all. If you take, say, 20 of those points away from his power play points, putting him down to 44 points, saying that he didn't get graduated up to power play 1. 44 would still be his career high for points. So, I mean, it's not like he was just making these numbers because of his promotion to power play 1. He was doing it all over the ice, and he was tied for third on the team with his plus minus. It was every aspect of this game, like I said, it was a monster season for him.
Well, speaking of every aspect, I mean, he tied his career best for goals this year. Last time he had 10 was 2019 to 2020. It was the most assists in his career, the most points, as you just pointed out. It was the second highest plus minus he's ever had, highest power play points. So is it time to say that this is the best Lightning trade in Lightning history? Jonathan Drouin for Mikhail Sergachev. It's pretty darn good. I mean,
Yzerman knew it like a month in.
I know I've told you guys this before, but I was when I got the notification back in 2017 or whenever, when the Lightning traded Jonathan Drouin, he was one of this was kind of really early in my Lightning fandom. I was devastated. I was like, no, Drouin's one of our best players ever. Who's this Sergachev bum? Like, we just got fleeced. And looking back on it, oh my God, I'm embarrassed about 2016 me and my thoughts on that.
Don't worry, man. We've all had those moments.
And I'd say, is there anybody else on the team that gets you more hyped up after a goal is scored than seeing Sergachev and when he has a celly? I mean, his face just lights up, and oh yeah.
The only guy that could maybe possibly in the future contest for that is Radish. Radish had a great silly in his first goal this year, so maybe Radish is going to give him a little bit of competition. But you're right, Sergachev has got some fantastic sellies. There's a lot of great pictures of him out there. But all right, let's go for the grades. Joe, I'll start with you this time. What's your grade for Mikhail Sergachev? A plus.
Real easy. A+. Yep.
Wow, Joe, we ever gotten an A+ from Joe today?
I don't know. Maybe Pointer may have gotten one, but I mean, he far exceeded expectations. And I mean, I actually think Hagel was one that got an A+ as well. When you got a guy that you think that you know what you have, and then he goes far above and beyond, this is like the definition of an A+ to me.
I'll give him an A. I don't know if I'm courageous enough to give him an A+, but an A, absolutely, argue a wall. Again, pretty much every aspect of his game wasn't flawless, but it was pretty close to perfect this year, given the situation that he was in, being the number one man for the first time in his career. Still a couple of warts defensively to maybe pick on, but again, given with what the season he had, A all the way.
I'm going to agree with Matt, and I'm going to go with an A here. The only reason I don't give him an A+ is because there were a couple of defensive mistakes I think he definitely needs to work on. I think he'll absolutely be able to work those things out and get better, no question about it. But there were some big ones that I think he needs to improve on. But overall, I mean, a fantastic season from Mikhail Sergachev. So he gets an A from all of us as his overall grade. And that leaves us with one more defenseman for today's episode, and that's Erik Cernak. Erik Cernak has only been on the team for a couple of years, believe it or not, and you don't hear him about a ton because he doesn't score a lot of goals, but he has been one of the most solid defensive defensemen for the Lightning ever since he's been here, I would say. So this year for Cernak, he played in 70 games. He had 2 goals, 14 assists, and 16 total points. But of course, the big thing for Cernak is that he only played in 1 game in the playoffs, which was the first game where the Lightning had that massive win. So, guys, I think Erik Cernak proved himself multiple times this year that he is the best defensive defenseman on the Lightning. How many games did we have where Erik Cernak was not in the lineup and the Lightning ended up giving up 6, 5, 7 goals in a game?
Especially in the playoffs.
Especially in the playoffs. And I think Erik Cernak was a big deal for the Lightning and not having him really, really, really hurt. And even he's not a, big offensively, he means so much to the team. And I say not big offensively, but he still had a good year compared to his past seasons. He had 16 points, and his most that he's ever had was 18 points. He still had a pretty decent year offensively. So I think he had an unbelievable year. What are your guys' thoughts?
He's just a force to be reckoned with. I mean, I remember it took me a little while to warm up on him for a little while, but I kind of, underestimated. Like, he was a really young player at the time. He still is a very young player, and we have him under contract for I think a max term deal. Was it 8 years?
Until 30-31.
Oh, man, I like that. I like that deal. It might be a little high on the cap side, but Erik Cernak is a steady defensive presence. We were talking about Mikhail Sergachev stepping up when the time came. I think Erik Cernak stepped up when the time came. With the loss of Ryan McDonough, we really needed a absolute shutdown D-man, and that's what he was. He played a lot of the season with Ian Cole, and, until Cole started to fall off and, a couple injuries throughout the lineup, a couple, deep areas being shifted, when those two were playing together at their best, they were probably one of the best shutdown lines in the league, shutdown defensive pairs in the league. They were unstoppable. You could not get past those two, and I think a lot of it was because of just Eric Cernak being such an immovable object. He's not an overly huge guy. I want to say 6'3", 6'4" or something, but he is built like a brick house. So he's got a lot of skill, and I just think he's so far that's just not at all his role. But there's a lot of the times where you see him driving the net and just could probably make a little extra play, but he's so smart and so good defensively that it just never even crosses his mind. But he really did step up in that defensive role this year.
Yeah, I mean, and him being a known entity for 5.2 for basically the foreseeable future, I like his game. You need someone that is able to slow things down, make other teams reconsider what they're going to be coming up against, especially with some of the physical play that he brings. And it was, I would say, a tough year for him because, like you said, Cole did have some ups and downs, and that did make things more difficult just because he directly is Chernak's partner in those scenarios. So I think that rather than Cernak having been
a brand new system as well, so Cernak, probably had to help him out there.
Sure, and it makes you look bad when someone else on the ice is performing, not up to standard as well. So it's even though the eye test says that he's not doing well, that he got scored on while he's out there, it's not really completely indicative of what happened. So I think that it was a good year, and the fact that the Lightning missed him so badly in the postseason when he got hurt by that dirty play by that awful Toronto player who will go nameless because he doesn't deserve to be mentioned. It really affected the Lightning. You could see that they didn't have that keep using cliche words, that shutdown ability quite as strong. And I'm glad that the Lightning have him for as long as they do, and hopefully that cussy he has is gonna be something that doesn't end up long term.
I've heard the word conky, but never cussy.
Here's the funny thing: we're talking about Cernak being injured this year. He actually played the most games he's ever had in a season this year at 70 games played. So he was actually relatively healthy, but even the injury that he did have was so impactful because he was so good for the Lightning this year.
He seems like he might be like the most brittle, hard-nosed guy that we've ever had.
I think it's just because of how much he does sacrifice himself and put his body on the line that he just happens to get injured so much. I can't remember if it was one of you guys, but somebody called him the zombie. He's just a dead man walking. He takes so much abuse and pain and somehow still manages to play the game at an elite level, but is only on one leg and one arm, and just despite dragging the other two limbs around, he's still just such a good player. I forget who called him the zombie, but I really loved that analogy.
I remember last year he was getting hurt like every other game, and I put out a picture of I looked up guy wrapped up in bubble wrap, and I put Cernak's face on that, and I'm like, please keep this man healthy. We need him, which again should go to show you how important he is to the Lightning, how good he's been, because we need him, and he's been a huge part of this team. But he did play 70 games this year. Hopefully he can play 82 next season.
Nice long off season to heal up to.
That's very true. I know it's been tough to not be deep in the playoff run this year, but maybe the rest will do a lot of guys, especially Cernak's good. All right, grades for Eric Cernak. I'll start it off this time. I'm going with an A. I mean, you look at the expectations for him. He was so good defensively, still decent offensively as well. And the fact that he was that sorely missed when he was injured, I think says a lot about his play this year.
Go ahead, Matt.
I was going to say a B, but you guys definitely swayed my opinion a little bit. I think after game one of the playoffs, and when there was just little to no net front presence, nobody boxing any of the offensive players out, you could tell he was sorely missed, almost MVP like how much he was missed, because it not that the Lightning crumbled, they were all fairly close games or anything, but the goals that did go in and did get past him, you're like, man, it would have been nice if Cernak was out there being able to box these guys out and then pressure these guys and not let X, Y, and Z get through. So I am giving him an A this year. If he could just be a little bit more durable, of course that is such a nitpick because he is such a hard, brick wall player and puts himself in these situations. And of course, I'm not at all blaming his injury in the playoffs against him. That was a predatory hit. That's nothing about his durability at all. But A for sure.
Yeah, I'll go B plus. Like you said, the durability is a big factor, but when someone's cheap shotting you, that doesn't come into play. And it's a great season for him.
So an A- overall for Erik Cernak, a very good grade again. So this 3 defensemen that we talked about today are probably the core pieces on the defensive side for the Lightning. Now, quickly before we wrap things up, I do think we should mention Stanley Cup playoffs going on. Did you guys watch Game 1 of the playoffs, or are you like me and just not super excited because it's not the Lightning in the playoffs?
Yeah, I watched most of the first period, missed most of the second period, and then the third period had my full attention. It was actually a really good game from what I did catch. It was chippy from the first whistle, but it wasn't overly aggressive or anything. But towards the end of the game, it started getting a little out of hand. Vegas, was controlling through most of the game, but it's going to be a really entertaining series. And I'm getting major Montreal versus Tampa vibes 2021. I've got Vegas in fun. Oh yeah. I mean, it's a mediocre team that barely made the playoffs, on the back of a hot goalie and one really hot forward. That's Montreal right there. And the goalie's starting to crumble once he reaches the finals. And I think it was the same score of Game 1 against the Lightning, 5-2 or something, or was it 4-2?
So you're saying that basically the cup depends on the performance of Bob?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think he had a under 900 save percentage that game, and I think Vegas, they have, just like the Lightning. Of course, they won the 2020 Cup bubble, but were always coming so close, but never close enough. They were, they missed the playoffs one fluke year by just a point, and then, it took a little bit of tragedy to get there. Of course, they're not on the same kind of timeline, but I do see some similarities there. And, once they finally get back to the finals, they're, showing their might and really stomping on their opponent's neck. And I'm getting major Montreal Tampa vibes.
Who's this Marchessault kid? Where the hell did he come from?
Some team down in Florida or something.
Why wasn't he re-signed?
Not to mention just Marchessault. How about Verhaeghe over on the other side? I mean, the Lightning have 2 guys that they had that were great players and are now playing in the Stanley Cup final. So a little bit bittersweet there, if you ask me. But of course, the cap gods are the ones holding back the. Really, that's where we can blame all these losses on. It's the cap. If we had a higher salary cap, who knows where the Lightning could be? But
can I tell you the funniest part about this series to me, or at least Game 1? Is that when Vegas was coming into the league, the expansion draft, Florida traded Vegas, Jonathan Marchessault, and Riley Smith, so they wouldn't select. Who is it? Alexander Petrovic. Petrovic is retired from professional hockey. He's not playing anymore.
It's what we call a mistake.
Meanwhile, Riley Smith and Jonathan Marchessault both scored against Florida in Game 1.
Well, Matt, I'm not getting the same vibes that you are. I think this is going to be a long series. I mean, heck, because I think Tampa dominated the first game against Montreal. While it was 5-2 as the final, it was just a 1-goal game all the way up until basically the end when things started out of hand a little bit. And Florida had a lead there for a little bit as well. So I think it's going to be a fun series. I really enjoyed Game 1. I did watch it despite what I said earlier, but fun series. I do hope Vegas takes it because even though I know a lot of people are saying, "Oh, you should root for Florida," I'm still very bitter. You guys know me here on the show. I'm hoping Vegas takes it, but or as the saying goes, I just hope both teams have fun. So,
I hope both teams have a terrible time.
Game 2 tonight.
That's right. Game 2 tonight as of this recording. I don't have any ill will towards Vegas. I'm not a huge hater against them. So, but it's going to be a fun series. We're going to continue to recap everything going on here. We'll get ready for continuing our report card series next week. So don't forget to like and subscribe right here on YouTube so you don't miss out on those episodes. Follow us at RBLR Lightning for updates on all of the other stuff as well. We'll see you guys in the next one. Go Bolts.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.